Hello, thank you very much for joining us for the next panel of the inaugural conference of the Korea Europe Center at Freie Universität Berlin. My name is Anselm Huppenbauer. I'm a PhD student at the Institute of Korean Studies here, and I'm going to host you through this session. And today I am very happy to introduce to you Professor Kim Youngmi. She will give a lecture on peacemaking on the Korean Peninsula. Can the international community help? And we are really happy to have Professor Kim today here. She is currently the director of the Scottish Centre for Korean Studies at the University of Edinburgh. And she is not only one of the best experts for Korean politics, so coalitions, how they form and how they deal, but also for the politics of Myanmar. There she not only shared her a lot of academic expertise, but she also headed there, or organized there, an art festival together with a Korean art group. But now I'm very happy to pass the word to Professor Kim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this talk. I'm really honored to be part of this inauguration event. I think I will start. I hope I can finish in time. On peacemaking on Korean Peninsula, can the international community help? So I will start with background to North Korea, South Korea, and U.S. relations, looking at the policy on engagement versus containment and the need to align international event to the Korean Peninsula. We witnessed that North Korea in transition on economic change or social change, and then I will end with some ideas on how to move forward. Basically, the key points I would like to talk about here is just 3 points. It starts with working with North Korea as it is, not as we would like it to be. So that's the first message. And the second, institutionalize dialogue, strengthen expertise. And finally, political strategy should be set beyond the nuclear question. So I'd like to talk about these 3 main points, what international community can do for peacemaking on Korean Peninsula. As you can see, those various pictures here, starting, there was actually a lot of crisis in late 2017. There was ICBM, missile tests by North Korea, and in December there was a lot of media attention requesting for interviews for whether there is likely to be war on the Korean Peninsula, and suddenly from January in 2018, Kim Jong-un had a new Year speech, and tension somewhat, was starting to be mitigated, and North Korea joined Pyeongchang Winter Olympics with numerous cheerleaders. And then there's, as you can see in the photo, there was 27th April Inter-Korea Summit, and then it moved on to 27th May, the second Inter-Korea Summit, and 12th June, that was North Korea, US, the Singapore Summit. And in September, there was Pyongyang Joint Declaration about Military Agreement, Civilian Exchanges, or JSA removal of landmines. And as the photo shows, in February 2019, there was a second summit in Vietnam between US and North Korea. And Trump and Kim met again in June on the border between North-South Korea. And so this is the timeline I just explained. And then there was another raging tension in December 3rd. Pyongyang won Washington, there will be Christmas gift. And March 2020, North Korea launched a series of short-range missiles. And in May, Actually, the U.S. Justice Department accused North Korea's state-owned bank of evading U.S. sanction laws. So 28 North Korean and 5 Chinese citizens were charged. And in June, North Korea actually blew up a liaison office in Kaesong. So here, the same old question remains. Will North Korea go for complete, verified, irreversible disarmament? Obviously, the both sides have three different sides. Korea, U.S. and North Korea have different ideas about denuclearization in Pyongyang and Washington. So another question would be, should sanctions be lifted before or after? And another question leads to, who ends the Korea War? Obviously, Kim Jong-un has different leadership or different style. Somebody, he's someone like less risk adverse. He launched 220 missile launches compared to his father, who did only 16 times, and Kim Il-sung, grandfather, only 15 times. So obviously, North Korea with 300 nuclear weapons is different from North Korea with previously 30 nuclear weapons. So North Korea advances its delivery system and technological capabilities. Here is the timetable I published in 2014, and I added the final line of 2018 until present. If you look at this table, actually it was US initiated Clinton administration urging to have engagement policy. And in 1997, Kim Dae-jung administration, the progressive government, the first progressive government, actually started to have this sunshine policy with engagement policy. So there was a continuance of even Nomuon administration early time, from 2000 to 2003. There was a mild engagement, but with Bush administration, there's a strong containment, categorizing North Korea as axis of evil. So if you look at the timeline between South Korea and EU, along with US leadership of North Korean policy, engagement, mild engagement, and then containment, actually the containment policy is followed a bit later from South Korea and also EU, from 2004 to 10, for South Korea 2008 to 11, while US started from 2001 already. And then there has been limited engagement 2011, and now we are at the stage whether is this engagement? Yes, in a way, there was series of summit and declaration, but at the moment we are kind of stuck. There's an interesting article. I really appreciate this invitation. Otherwise, I would not have opportunity to update all this recent data. I've been actually reading the very, very fresh articles until midnight last night to update this PowerPoint. I found the very recent article, very interesting one by Kim and Che, asking what kind of power is the EU? And this is very interesting. You can look at from military power, civilian power, and normative power. So obviously when we talk about military power, that is about military coercion, use of a military force. And when it comes to normative, that's more about persuasion, contagion, informational or transformance. However, the authors conclude that European power is not military power or normative power, but it's rather a civilian power, focusing more on dialogue, diplomacy, trade, economic technical assistance, international organization, more pursuing to have military multilateralism. So they are pursuing that both economic and international interest. And there is further data. The table actually shows that time goes by. This is a time about containment time, and gradually, 2006 to 2016 is actually more containment period, but that was right after engagement, right? So you can see the higher number of import-export that goes down drastically up until 2016, almost non-existent. But it does not mean there's nothing at all. You can still see the figure 222, balance 16. See? So this is another figure. North Korea's top trading partner, number one is China, number two Singapore. Every year it changes a little bit. This year I checked number one China, number two is Russia. Interestingly, I think I have a slide later. Number 5, I think, was Switzerland. I'll come back with the data later. So these are the North Korea's top trading partners, and obviously EU countries altogether is still number 9. So there's still some trade going on. Something does not actually belong to sanction. Right. Before I move on to what international community can do on Korean Peninsula, peacemaking procedure, maybe I should introduce North Korea in transition. They changed their national policy from military first to Pyeongjin, to carry on the reform together with military and economic development. So there has been marketization from below. In 2016, so far my recent data, I updated it up until last night, 2019 to 2020, but I have lots of data more on 2016. I think that's when, academics, they get data up until 2016 and then publish later. I think that's the time difference, I guess. So up until 2016, the North Korean economy grew, which is 3.9%, which is highest since 1999. So there has been differences with new leadership, and society has become more, accepting the social impact of economic reforms and greater access to the world. And also there is a spread of internet as well. Not a lot, but still. And as I mentioned before, there was economic growth in 2016, 3.9. GDP also has went up despite the sanctions. And it has been driven by strong performances in mining and energy, which account for 33% of country's industrial sector. And this economic growth is partly because of its active nuclear missile development program and manufacture of components. And that actually also boosted electricity production in 2016. And also there has been, the critical transformation. The export rose by 4.6% compared to the highest one was in 11% jump in 2013. And there was a fishery product went up to 74%. There's also imports 4.8%. Actually, this figure is, I just checked last night, it is lower, much lower than 4.8%. But mostly they have plant products, textile stuff. And trade between two Koreas, there has been, 87% went down due to shutdown of the Kaesong industrial zone. But North Korean economy is still in process of critical transformation. It shows the growth of both formal and informal markets. And growth of formal market, this is a big thing actually, given that both Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il loathed the idea of capitalists. Kim Jong-un appears to be very different. So the new regime, Kim Jong-un administration, actually allowed 404 markets That's the figure from 2016, and 600,000 stalls. And there has been countless unofficial informal markets, so-called 장마당. So these count for 70 to 90% of household income, meaning they have more income out of informal sources of job. So before 2005, the average monthly income was about 100,000 North Korean won, which is about $90. And their half income was coming from official wage and another half from unofficial side jobs like bartering at the market, having little stall, etc., etc. So between 2006 to 2010, the ratio changed with 2/3 of income coming from unofficial jobs, not half anymore. So after 2011, the monthly income became 430,000 North Korean won, which is around $477, of which 350,000 won, North Korean won, comes from unofficial jobs. So markets will transform the structure of the economy, and also market will transform the mindset of people. So obviously you can see, they have more freedom of economic activities compared to the previous time. I would not say freedom of Western liberalized society. I'm talking about compared to the previous regime. And we cannot foresee the implication yet, but I can see there will be some changes within society. So there's also another very interesting research by Park published in 2019, a study on transition economy in EU and its implication on North Korea. The data also shows that privatization of central factories has been 25.7% in 2016 compared to 10 years ago. In 2006, that was 11.3. So private-run shops among the state-owned shop has been 57%. That was also again increased compared to 10 years ago, which was 42% only. And obviously a lot of small-sized shops run privately, which consists of 64%, almost 65% compared to 10 years ago, 55%. So here's a table by Burkhardt, Park, and Zakharova, the very recent paper as well. It shows the trade volume in North Korea's economic exchange with Russia and EU. So you can see from 2000, it was much higher during the engagement period, and then it goes drastically go down after 2005, 7, and there. But if you look at 2017, there's still things going on with EU and Russia. You can see this is very interesting data. So northeastern, the seaside, I think that's Vladivostok, that area, there are a lot of North Korean laborers. That is another major source of the income of the one of major source of income for the state. North Korean laborers working in Vladivostok, if you look at this figure, even during the containment time from 2012 up until 2007, the figure is quite high. In 2017, you can see 6,100 North Korean laborers working in Vladivostok, in Russia. So this is another interesting data showing EU DPRK trade and EU aid to DPRK. So you can see everything is from engagement up, going down. And this is another one, trade between EU member state and DPRK. I'm not going to repeat, but you can see the figures. So trade dependence on China is obviously over 90%. In 2017, they were relying on trade with China 94.8%. And export to China is rather smaller, but still 1.65 billion US dollar, and import from China is 3.61 billion dollar, mostly oil. And interestingly, I just mentioned before briefly, Switzerland is there. Obviously, Switzerland is not a member of EU, but it has largest trade partner among European countries. Previously, that was a fifth mostly, largest trading company, and they mostly dairy product, farm products, because the products are less restricted by sanction, like a watch, mechanic. So kind of a side story. Actually, Switzerland banned on watch, especially Rolex, export to North Korea in 2016. But then again, interestingly, I haven't been there, but at Daesong, I think it's a Daesong department store in Pyongyang, they do have Rolex, Tissot, Omega, all these luxury watch, plus Nike and other Western products. And so obviously there's a less restricted materials by sanction, like watch, medical instruments, or light industry products and fabrics, and artificial fabrics and delicatessens. Those goods have been imported to North Korea. So if you look at this data, I got it from actually Kotra. Here, the pink is import. Up until 2014, there has been export as well, but after 2015 until 2019, this is obviously mostly about import only. So you can see the trade imbalance deficit here. And this is a 10 years of North Korea's import and export. The blue is export and blue is import. And as I explained before, more import after 2018 and almost non-existent of export. And this is another data of what they export, mostly mineral and steel, metal, iron, coal, fabrics, and etc. Almost non-existent actually in 2018 and 2019. And then main import of last year's, that's again the fabrics. I don't think I'm going to repeat. I will move on quickly. There's a changing societies, as I mentioned, increased number of middle class, so-called donju, meaning owner of money. And there's more traffic in the streets, and the city is filled with a skyline. I would not say filled with skyline, but still there are a lot of high buildings. And North Korea's per capita growth, I think that was 2017 or 16, was 1.5 million won by Korean won, which is about $1,342. Again, that is still less than 5% of South Korea's per capita gross national income. Here, PPP is written as 35,790. I quickly checked this morning about GDP per capita of South Korea. That is 26,000. 26,900. I think that's every country's GDP per capita, and GDP has decreased because of a corona pandemic. So there's a picture of the street and Dongil market here. And another thing is social change with internet traffic. So out of 25 million North Korean, 2 million regular users are there. That's quite a big number already, right? And with the rest of the world and non-North Korean websites, I mean, that's there. And what do North Koreans do when they browse the internet? I think I have a slide later. Mostly they do internet, online game. And so there is a censorship, but they also, there's 1% of people, they actually use VPN as well. So there's a still gray area there in terms of censorship. And of course, internet penetration is very low. So this is a slide. What do they do online? Do they actually get to the World Wide Web? They have their own intranet from the from the drama. Recently, I watched Crash Landing on You, I think something like that. And I learned that you have to buy app at the designated place. So its own intranet, it does have a North Korean version of the internet. And where there is a place there where citizens can exchange messages and mail and browse websites. And yeah, there's an online streaming platform as well, and perhaps not the K-drama, but there is some. I see defectors communication often on internet. They've been watching quite a lot of Korean dramas. Whether they get they call that Alpan, the CD previously, but now I guess it's a USB. They smuggled illegally, or any various sort of network. They do watch South Korean drama. And internet, now they have, mostly they rely on China's unicorn, and after 2017, a Russian company, Trans Telecom, also arrived. So that is obviously, it's unclear whether if Russian company broke any sanctions, probably yes. But anyway, there's a joint venture with a North Korean company, and the new connection is faster and greater bandwidth and allows North Koreans to say, yeah, actually, yes, you can have Skype. That's what I read. And KoreaLink, that's KoreaLink, I think that's a North Korean broadband that control what North Korean watches, obviously, but online eventually they go. I mean, there must be some section that you can't really control. The reason why I talk about internet is that, as I mentioned before, 65% of websites are actually video games, like a World of Tanks, that's the most popular video game. And so only 1% of North Koreans VPN to browse. And there's social media, they watch Chinese YouTube, Youku, visit other random websites. The problem here is that in July 30, 2020, EU very unusually actually put sanctions against cyber attacks by North Korea. So Joseon Expo had a cyber attack on Polish Financial Supervisory Authority. And also, Joseon Expo's environment was revealed with the WannaCry ransomware attack. So there's a discussion whether they should have human rights sanctions by EU as well. So they are more focusing on EU's interests rather than diplomacy or multilateralism. That's the opinion by Raymond Pacheco Pardos. So crisis of success, is there any North Korean style? So North Korea is changing, although the combination of policies and practices may lead to unintended consequences. Yes, there is not only just uranium of enrichment of but there's an enrichment of North Korean society. But this also can create dislocation, new inequality and differences, ultimately, some discontent, obviously, when more marketization, more liberalization, that brings inequalities, right? And channeling those environment, society will be a challenge for Kim Jong-un. So when you look at South Korean government, obviously there's a question, is South Korea squeezed? Is that Korea passing? Or South Korean president as a negotiator, the main driver leading the conversation between North Korea and US and the rest of the world? Excuse me. Obviously, he's not a dove. But he's different from both Kim Dae-jung and Roh Moo-hyun administration with a different difficult predicament. He opposed DOD and found himself having to pay for it. And there's obviously a negative impact with the DOD in terms of ties with China. Now let me move on to the final section. What can the EU do? Talk first, build trust, talk with a purpose, having political dialogue, probably about disarmament, probably later it comes carrot and stick. It comes with a little bit of a human right as well, because if they talk about human right first, North Korea will not start to have a conversation at all. So clarify what is at stake in EU-North Korea relations and build a relation with a trust around them. So that is not only my own opinion, but majority of expertise on EU-North Korea relations I gathered and studied recently. So this is where we are. Lack of involvement, obviously, according to Jim Ho. He's criticizing that there is not much of involvement with North Korea. North Korea has a few friends in Europe, and even majority of North Korean experts, I feel guilty, including myself. I would not call myself as a North Korean expert, no, excuse me. But in general, people comment on North Korea. Like me, I do not actually have a direct experience of North Korea, you see? So we need to improve this kind of environment, a little bit different direction. Probably I should visit North Korea and communicate with North Korean professors or students and expect US to be the main player. That's what what not only EU member states, but majority of international communities are expecting US to take the leadership with chunky version of their own budget, right? And probably it's time to talk with China and Russia as well. And obviously, at the moment, according to Jim Ho, few European interests are at stake with North Korea. So he urges that this is time for EU to talk to North Korea. There should be also institutional dialogue, strengthening and institutionalizing interaction between EU and North Korea, facilitating international negotiations with North Korea on its denuclearization. So EU member states diplomatic network and building on those key role players, that is very crucial. So these are the opinions from European Union's consortium on North Korea. And also strengthen expertise and analysis on North Korea. So we need to know more about North Korea. We need to deal more with North Korean expert people. So they know us better than we know them. So that has to change. And also EU can provide an independent European source of analysis and expertise to increase the EU strategic autonomy, meaning more EU fund like FP9 or Horizon European program. They can create dedicated European network of experts. So of course, nuclear questions matter. It was very interesting. I think it was just published last night and this morning actually. I think I print this paper out by I think it was a Foreign Affairs, published by Victor Cha this morning, I think. I just read overnight. And he's urging that, should integrate the policies that have worked in the past with some new elements. But, those did not work in the past should not take it. So he's urging saying, negotiate an initial verifiable freeze of all plutonium, uranium nuclear operations in and around Yongbyon nuclear complex, and negotiate denuclearization steps like a verifiable declaration. And also European expertise also talk about strengthening European declaratory policy and diplomacy on non-proliferation. But most of them, they urge that something they should do gradually, practically, based on reality. And also gradually should respond more effectively on North Korean sanctions evasion techniques and provide more assistance to promote capacity building with partners. And also there should be politics beyond nuclear. EU officials should build trust with North Korean counterparts. And so they could raise their concern directly, having conversation with Pyongyang. And also they should increase more engagement with Pyongyang to support the EU's Asia security, that was actually launched in 2018. And the EU can take the general role of facilitator between sparing party, DPRK political dialogue could serve as a back channel for Washington and Pyongyang. When there's a conversation not going anywhere, meeting stalemate, maybe EU can play as a back channel, having individual discussion. And this is a very interesting quote. I got it from Victor Charles' article last night. According to former Secretary of Defense William Perry, he says that the US must deal with North Korea as it is rather than as it would wish it to be. So US should deal with North Korea as it is rather than as it would wish it to be. You see what I mean? So adopting a denuclearization strategy that contends with North Korea as a de facto nuclear weapon state. So this is a very, when I read this, I thought, oh, this is not Victor Cha's voice. So he had more mind. I thought he was kind of a hawkish, policy preferred person. But this quoting this is saying actually accept where North Korea is now and build trust, start to have a conversation and move on. So it's not like all or nothing approach. That did not work. That's what he is arguing. So the first priority in that case should be to rein in a one-way program. So Victor Cha is suggesting to Joe Biden, new administration, probably mini deal would be most pragmatic, unlike all the weapons for all the sanctions deal by Trump. So pathway for new relationship is very important to build. And then they could move on for peace declaration. And then those peace declaration and negotiation can come together with human rights baskets and human rights security assurances and North pledge not to transfer weapons, materials, or technologies. So humanitarian focus would be also desirable in the process of communicating with North Korea, allowing more aid, obviously, and visit to orphanage. And such negotiation then shift to long-term abandonment of all nuclear weapons and program. Another other possible area of engagement could be health and education. So health, this is actually the right time to discuss health with some aid for COVID pandemic crisis. So we can address the North Korean humanitarian crisis at the European and international level. So North Korea deal with infectious disease, so EU can help, not only EU, international community, and then focus on human rights situation in North Korea while engaging with North Korea. European member states should continue to foster exchange with North Korea not only the state, but North Korean societies in non-sensitive sectors such as culture, education. Probably we could have a conference together. We could have a cultural festival together. And education can also work in, as a part of engagement process, like providing vocational training. As far as I know, Sweden and Denmark, there has been some vocational or farming training or technique support. I remember there was something going on by Sweden and Denmark. So, I mean, even during the sanction or containment time, there are a number of countries actually in Europe having close conversation with North Korea, and that they should extend or intensify this kind of quiet environment a bit wider, broader. And extend travel exchange could be, there are a lot of British who used to go to North Korea. I used to be very envious. I wanted to join. And also I remember my colleague in St. Andrew also went to North Korea University in Pyongyang. Post. He taught during the summertime as a professor from University of St. Andrew, but he went to North Korea and taught during the summertime. So in summary, I think I can end with those conclusions. First, engage with North Korea directly, like EU, DPRK dialogues, something like that. And EU can play a key role as the research presented already, global civilian power, and facilitate expert network like EU Fund, FP7 or Horizon European Program. That EU has a good infrastructure to facilitate expertise and engage with not North Korean state, but also society as well, and accept where North Korea is now and negotiate practically, building trust each other, gradual denuclearization, together with human rights and engaging with North Korea. I think I talked too much. I should end here.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for this rich lecture with so many fresh data. Like, I really was happy about all the data from 2019, from 2020, because it's very hard to get such a good summary and analysis of them so recent. And I would actually like to use the opportunity and ask you the first question, because you gave many good ideas what EU countries could do, and I was also surprised about Victor Cha's notion that now finally one should probably accept North Korea as a de facto nuclear state. And how realistic do you see this? Like, I also believe that if you can't live with North Korea having nuclear arms, probably all the ensuing talks are very unlikely to happen. So what kind of realism do you see for this notion of accepting North Korea as a nuclear state for the European states, maybe also for the new administration in America?
Well, actually, Victor Cha's very fresh paper this morning does not say U.S. should have engagement policy right away. He's still taking hawkish position. So sanctions should stay, but there should be gradual engagement, accepting. It does not necessarily mean accepting, okay, North Korea, you can have nuclear power. I don't think that's what it meant. Accept where North Korea is and build gradual communication and trust to meet the final end of denuclearization of North Korea. However, that will take much longer, not like an all or nothing kind of procedure done by Trump administration.
All right, thank you very much. And also we have another question by Martin Gehlmann. He says, thank you very much for your presentation. How do you see the role of China for the peace process on the Korean Peninsula? Do you think China will support an inter-Korean peace process in the light of worsening US-China relations?
That's a very interesting question. China plays enormous role maintaining North Korean economy. If you look at just trading partner, trade takes like 90%. So during the economic sanctions, North Korea rely on China and next Russia. But when it comes to this peace dialogue, Russia and China are left behind, partially because this is also same time between the trade war between US and China, right? So it's not just about peace procedure on Korean Peninsula. There's something more complicated going together. So obviously the Korean war itself, the peace procedure in Korean Peninsula itself, is never about only Korea. It's about international security. And I'm not really sure China and Russia, have been playing active role in that. That's why they talk about multilateral talk and six-party talk. Obviously, it did not work properly in the past, right? But even EU, many commentator on EU-North Korea relation was saying EU should be part of this potential six-party talk as a negotiator, if not just observer. EU should be part of it. In that case, it will not be a six-party talk, right? More multilateral talk.
I see. Thank you for the answer. And however, sorry for asking the first question again in combination with the second one. Like, to what degree do you think that China could accept North Korea as a de facto nuclear state?
Well, the thing is, China opposed North Korea to develop nuclear weapons. But North Korea, despite China's opposition, North Korea went on independently. That actually shows China has, apart from our expectation, China first may not care much. Second, China has less interest in that. That's how I see. So sometimes when great power in the region are not paying much attention to small state is more likely to have a bit more of independence and freedom, and they can develop on their own way. That's how I see.
There is probably still time for one more question. And I was very happy about all those recent data. And I would like to ask, how do you assess the reliability of those very recent data on trade with North Korea, on the imports? Because, for example, like in the Chinese example, I have read that there is some official trade, and there's also like private barter trade between China and North Korea the same way. Do you know how this works?
Obviously, private barter is not included. So what we see is mostly from IMF or Korean statistic data website, and also I got data from EU website or North 38. So there are a number of data, measuring the trade, what's going on and out. But these are mostly done with a paper officially. They found out through partner countries. So there are more, right? There are more bartering or individual on. Even if we look at the recent cases that beyond sanction, I did not bring the data in this slide. I read another article beyond sanctions. There are a lot of activities going around that goes beyond sanction. Like a North Korean ship can have a foreign name of company that is connected to, let's say, Russia or China or different countries, and then if they have a big, through the ship, if they import a number of materials, I'm talking about really bulky amount of products coming to North Korea with the company name of China or Russia or third name of any, then that is not reported, and we don't know, right? So there's maybe if anybody's interested in activity beyond sanction, you can read some article about that. There are a lot of things actually going on. Even if you look at Iranian case, my colleague went to Iran, and he was saying, it was by then, a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, it was during the sanction, and still now, I mean, it was, Iran was a very isolated time. But he said he doesn't see much of sanction effect because people were still having lots of foreign products. God knows how they got it, but there are things.
And also now another question by Ho Ji-kang has been received, and he asks, sanctions are a measure to prevent North Korea from developing nuclear weapons. And it was also a measure to prevent North Korea from doing anything with foreign countries like the European Union. How can we keep this as it is and ask for building trust with North Korea? Like sanctions and building trust are incompatible, Mr. Kang says. And you cannot say trust without releasing sanctions. How can you do trust building while continuing sanctions? Like this phrase is similar to the famous saying of President Kim Jong-sam, who said, "We cannot shake hands with a country with nuclear weapons." So how do you deal with that?
That's a very good question. But many expertise think as I just mentioned, that there are a lot of loopholes, even with sanction. North Korea get by with that, right? So we can think about the other way around. Maybe with economic sanction, let that exist. And let North Korea, we accept North Korea, we know, does have big power on nuclear weapon. It has been much bigger in the last few years. We accept that, the reality, and we focus on what we can do with existing circumstances. And majority of people were saying is that try to build network with, of course, state comes first, but lower level of, there are a number of diplomatic connection with North Korea in Europe as well. So they start with a conversation saying, actually, I think it was last year, North Korean disabled children visited UK, and they had a performance. And obviously, Jim Ho mentioned this is more like a propaganda tool. But whether that is a propaganda tool or not, it's still great to see North Korean disabled children coming, visiting the UK. And previously, during the containment time, where I worked previously at Central European University in Budapest, when I worked there, I did not see any North Korean academics. But right before I arrived, so I think that was like 2007-ish, annually, North Korean academics used to visit Budapest at the Central European University, 4 or 5 together, and they listened to my colleagues' international relations lectures. Can you believe it? There used to be. So there are a lot of activities we can actually still continue beyond sanction. And also healthcare, humanitarian aid, along with sanction, it has been decreased, but there is still there. So we can increase a little bit more. And also vocational training. North Korea asked Denmark and Sweden to help them improve farming facilities. They ask. When they ask, maybe the much richer European countries can transfer their farming technology to North Korea. So that's the way they build trust. That's the way they engage. So if we actually think about how to engage North Korea, that goes beyond sanctions. There are a lot of activities we can think about.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Kim, for giving so many questions. Do we have still time for one more question? Or so last question from Elisa. North Korean nuclear weapons. For North Korea, nuclear weapons are one of the only negotiating tool the country still has in place, which it can use for the international society. Do you think they can afford to stop their program in exchange for better economic relationships while maintaining their political structure?
You mean the question is a bit broad. I mean, so having North Korea, the military weapon, at the same time maintaining regime, at the same time we engage. So that's the question, right? I think that's how we should start. I don't think the regime will change rapidly with engagement policies, with opening their market. If you look at South Korean society, there was democratization in 1987, but authoritarian regime did not go away until 1997. And obviously dominant ruling environment still exists up until now. So this strong authoritarian environment, the way they nurtured people's mindset would not go away, let's say, for at least a generation. So I think building trust will go together as well it is.
Thank you for this also quite hopeful outlook. And thank you to everybody for listening to the second panel today. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow again for the panel on conflict and peace on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you very much and goodbye.